For regular videos on ancient cultures and forgotten civilizations, please subscribe. I was just listening to my voicemails and I found one here that might interest you.
Hello, Dr. Miano. Myself Siddharth from India. My question is regarding the Varna system in ancient Vedic India. Now, the word Varna in Sanskrit literally means color. Now, from what I know, the pre-Aryan peoples of the Indian subcontinent, which is to say, the inhabitants of the Harappan civilization as well as other inhabitants, were dark-skinned, whereas the migrating Aryans had a lighter skin tone. Now, from the Aryan migration theory, we know that the migrating Aryans had got mixed up with the local populations of the Indian subcontinent. Now, if this is so, why would the system of hierarchy be based on color? Was it actually based on color, or is it a simple misunderstanding? Could you please throw some light into this? Thank you.
Was the Varna system during the Vedic period based on skin color, or was it a misunderstanding? An interesting question. Thank you for sending it. Before we get into the possible racial aspect of the Varna system, let me explain what Varna is to my viewers who don't know. It refers to group identities in society, commonly called castes in English. Varna is perhaps better understood as ritual status. A hierarchy of status exists in Indian society, with Brahmins, priests, considered the highest and purest. Then Kshatriyas, warrior aristocrats, then Vaishyas, cultivators and traders, and then Shudras, laborers. Being at the top of the hierarchy, the Brahmins not only have control over ritual, but also are considered the most ritually pure. According to the Brahmins themselves, the Varna system was created in primeval times and has remained virtually unchanged ever since. Historians, on the other hand, are of the opinion that the Varna system developed over time. In order for a society to develop with divisions like this, there need to be preconditions. 3 preconditions to be precise. First, the society must have social disparities. Most societies do. Second, there has to be an unequal distribution of economic resources in that society. And third, the inequality needs to be legitimized by those in power and made irreversible. And a common way to do this is by virtue of supernatural authority. All of this usually happens gradually, becoming more solidified and more complex over time. The Vedas are our oldest corpus of text for South Asia. So what did Varna mean during the Vedic age? We find the term Varna, which does, as you say, literally mean color, mentioned in the Rig Veda, the oldest of the Vedas, a total of 22 times. 17 of the references are with respect to the Devas, or deities, such as Agni, Usha, etc. Varna in the context of Devas could mean complexion, luster, or features. For example, in hymn 34 of Book 3 of the Rig Veda, "Forward to fiercely falling blows pressed Indra, hero-like doing many heroic exploits. These holy songs he taught the bard, who gazed upon him and widely spread these dawn's resplendent color." So it says the goddess Dawn, or Usha's Shukla Varna, original Sanskrit meaning fair complexion, widely spreads or increases. This could have a double meaning. It could mean Indra made Usha shine brighter, thus increasing the whiteness, or it could refer to the bard's white complexion. Regardless of the interpretation, the description is of an otherworldly event. Hence, we should be cautious in interpreting the meaning of Varna as one referring to skin pigmentation. Only 5 times is the term Varna used in the Rig Veda with reference to humans. In Rig Veda, Book 9, hymn 71, "Strong bellowing he goes like one who slays the folk. He lets this hue of Asuras flow off from him, throws off his covering, seeks his father's meeting place, and thus makes for himself the bright robe he assumes." In this hymn, the poet talks about the hue of the Asuras, which could refer to a form. Asuras are seen as possessing magical qualities and could change their color, shift shapes, and take multiple forms. Hence, Varna in this context could refer to form. But as you can see, the usage of the word is open to interpretation. Significantly, the word Varna in the Vedas isn't used in reference to the four Varnas as we understand them today. We find the earliest known mention of the four groups of the Varna system in the 10th mandala or book of the Rig Veda, known as the Purusha Sukta, but it doesn't use the word Varna. The hymn says, "When they divided Purusha, how many portions did they make? What do they call his mouth, his arms? What do they call his thighs and feet? The Brahmin was his mouth. Of both his arms was the Rajanya made. His thighs became the Vaishya. From his feet the Shudra was produced." So according to the hymn, from the body parts of the Purusha, or the divine cosmic being, the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, termed Rajanya in this case, Vaishyas and Shudras were created. This is the only time the terms Vaishya and Shudra are used in the Rig Veda. There are doubts that the Purusha Sukta was a part of the original Rig Veda, some considering it a later medieval edition, as the Sanskrit of the hymn is more refined and modern than the Sanskrit of the rest of the Rig Veda. Even so, the socio-political divisions mentioned in this passage are not connected with Varna at this point. Another term often translated as caste is jati, but this is not the same as Varna, although they do overlap. The number of jatis is so many that it's difficult to count them, and the hierarchical structure of jatis is not uniform nor consistent from region to region. Jatis exist both within and outside of Hinduism. The term jati arises from the word for birth, and it suggests social divisions based on kinship. Although it is difficult to know for sure, many scholars think that kinship-based divisions came before Varna and may have existed in the Vedic period. There are forest dwellers in South Asia that have kinship-based divisions but do not have Varna, and this might be a clue that jati did not derive from Varna but had a separate origin. Socio-political divisions that are believed to be very early include the Jana, Vish, Grama, Griha, and Kula. Jana translates to tribe, Vish refers to a clan, Grama in modern Sanskrit means village, but in the Rigvedic context the reference was to a mobile group of individuals. Kula means a family, and the head of the family was known as the Kulapati. Griha meant abode or home. Looking at this from a developmental perspective, kinship-based groupings, the elements of jati, would have formed at the time when social disparities emerged. Varna would have come later with new attitudes about authority and prescribed rules about access to resources. This is hypothetical, of course, but based on what we have seen in other cultures. Megasthenes, a Greek who visited India in the 4th century BCE, referred to 7 broad divisions in their society without indicating that these divisions were based on the idea of purity. The most respected group, he says, are the philosophers, and in that group he places the Brahmins, but also Shramanas, ascetics, who are associated with Jainism and Buddhism rather than Hinduism. Some scholars suspect the change in the meaning of the Varnas took place during the time the Dharma Shastras were written. That would be the early centuries CE. Other scholars are not certain when this change took place, but overall, most historians agree the Varna system didn't exist in the Vedic age. The Varna system was either completely non-existent or in its embryonic stage. The Varna system is elaborated further in the Dharma Shastras, which are treatises on Hindu law, in which the duties of the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras are discussed. Those who belonged to the Varna system were known as Savarna, and those who fell outside the Varna system were known as Avarna. You can say the Avarna were the outcasts of the society, though modern scholarship suggests the outcasts were not the same as untouchables seen in the later caste system in India. Are there any references in early texts to the Varna system being based on skin color? Not really, no. We find one shloka from the Mahabharata that says the Brahmins are white, Kshatriyas red, Vaishyas yellow, and Shudras black. The description is hardly literal. Here the writer is talking about the 4 Varnas with respect to their qualities or gunas. Brahmins were said to possess sattvic qualities, which were associated with leading an austere life, hence the color white was used. Kshatriyas possessed rajasic or regal qualities, associated with an active lifestyle that desired material wealth and glory, symbolized by red. Vaishyas were supposed to have a mix of both Rajasic and Sattvic qualities, hence yellow. Shudras were associated with tamasic qualities, which involved a poor lifestyle, such as living in areas low in light and eating in the darkness, and hence they were assigned the color black. Another thing to think about is that today we find a variety of skin tones in the same Varna. You can find dark-skinned Brahmins and fair-skinned Shudras. If Varna is based on skin color, how can that be? So, how did the idea of Varna having racial connotations arise? In the late 18th and early 19th centuries, the Orientalists in British India used battles described in the Rig Veda between the Aryans and the Dasas, Dasyus, and Panis to float the idea that Varna referred to skin tone. The scholars viewed the conflict between the Aryans and the Dasas and Dasyus as one between a race of light-skinned Caucasian-looking people who defeated and subjugated a dark-skinned native populace of India. Orientalists described the natives of India as savages and bereft of any sophisticated culture and civilization. This line of thought was popular among European intellectual spheres in the 19th century. They believed a mythical race of Aryans ruled the earth and brought civilization to India, Persia, and Europe. The idea was to justify the British takeover of India as, hey, look, we are just like your ancestors in your holy texts. The objective of the scholarship was to create a common bond between the Hindu majority and the British. Prior to the writings of the 19th century Orientalists, the idea that Aryans were light-skinned people who introduced religion and culture to India did not exist. The term Aryan was derived from the Vedic word Arya, which means noble. Arya had nothing to do with the color of one's skin or ethnicity, but with the qualities of an individual. 19th century Orientalists used several physical identifiers in the Rig Veda to conclude that Arya were a different racial group than the un-Arya. The Rig Veda describes the Dasas as dark, but is the term literal? Some scholars argue that the term dark is figurative, as in dark arts, rather than literally dark-skinned. Dasas and Dasyus are described as people who lack the noble practices of the Arya, such as rituals, leading a virtuous life and taking part in sacrifices. Hence, from the point of view of the Aryas, the term dark would refer to practices they viewed as unfit for society, rather than the complexion of people. Now, there are some instances where the Dasas do appear to be described as having literal dark skin, but those instances are rare. Another physical characteristic that was used by Max Mueller, a noted 19th century Orientalist, is the term anasa to describe the enemy of the Aryas. Mueller interpreted the term from a-nasa, meaning noseless or flat nose, compared to the sharp-nosed Aryans. As many indigenous tribes of India have a differently shaped nose than the sharper features associated with some Caucasian people, Mueller viewed the descriptions of Dasas in racial terms. Now we have to keep in mind that during the 19th century, racial science was a thing, where humans were classified based on skin tones, skull shapes, and nasal features. The theories of racial science have been discarded now, but back then, they were a hot topic. So, Mueller's interpretation of Anasa as flat-nosed indigenous people, who were being attacked by a sharp-featured Indo-Aryan invader, was a product of the age. There are alternative meanings for Anasa proposed by historians. One interpretation is that it means mouthless or faceless. Now, a human will not be faceless, hence scholars suggest it could mean someone whose speech was not clear. The exact meaning of Anasa is still debated. My point is that the term Dasa or Dasya or Pani does not appear to refer to a race. Now, I have in past videos made a point of saying, oh look, some of the Dasas were dark-skinned as compared to the Indo-Aryans who came into India. And yes, that will be true in many cases, but my point is that the term Dasa or Dasyu or Pani does not appear to refer to a race. Okay? In modern scholarship, there is a consensus that the differences between Arya and Dasas were cultural and linguistic. Dasas had different rites, speech, and deities, and allegedly resorted to magic. They probably included people of different complexions, though. They probably included people of different languages. They possessed great strength and owned a lot of cattle. They differed culturally from the Aryas. Some scholars suggest they were earlier waves of Indo-Aryan migrants to the subcontinent who had abandoned their ancestral ways of living and worship. That's possible. Other scholars say that the Dasas were Proto-Scythian people. Some historians have proposed the Dasas were an Indo-Iranian tribe known as the Dahai that lived north of present-day Iran. To summarize, there is no evidence of a Varna system during the Vedic age. Varna in the Vedas referred to a variety of things, including complexion, luster, brightness, or form. The descriptions were not always static and often talked about supernatural events. Varnas, as we know them, probably started emerging in the second half of the first millennium BCE. Throughout most of Indian history, Varna was probably not associated with skin color. Racial connotations to Varna were assigned in the 19th century by Orientalists who imagined a dark-skinned indigenous population being subjugated by a white-skinned invading people. I admit I placed too much emphasis on this point in the previous video I did Civilization Begin in India? I do think the evidence is clear that the different tones of skin in India are the result of genetic mixing. There's no doubt about that. But was it connected with Varna? Was it connected with a clear-cut division between the skin color of Aryans and the skin color of Dasas? No. I hope that answered your question. And if any of you watching would like to have a question answered, possibly in a video, all you have to do is go to speakpipe.com/DavidMiano and leave me a voicemail. And if you'd like to support the channel, the best way to do that is to become a patron at patreon.com/World of Antiquity. Or simply hit the super thanks button under this video. You might like my little e-booklet, Why Ancient History Matters. It's designed to persuade people that the subject is important, even in the modern world. You might also wish to use it to help spread the word. So feel free to share it with someone you know. It's free for anyone who wants it. I've left a link in the description box below the video for you to grab a copy. Catch you later.